isn't that interesting? Glenn, you will remember that you and I chatted when I was running for the Senate in California in 2010, and I talked about this water situation through that entire Senate campaign. It is a man-made disaster. This California is the classic case of liberals being willing to sacrifice other people's lives and livelihoods at the altar of their ideology. It is a tragedy. And you have agricultural land in California, the most productive agricultural land in the world has been destroyed. And by the way, President Obama goes out to California a little over a year ago, calls it a tragedy of global warming, and hands out money to a food bank. This is all about politics and policy, and it is liberal environmentalists that have brought us this tragedy.
So as I drive down in the farming section, the Central Valley there in California, as I'm driving through there, I see these farms that are just becoming wasteland. And
right.
There are signs everywhere. This is Congress, this is Congress, this is Congress. What should Congress be doing?
Well, it's interesting. So on top of the environmentalists saying that they can't build any new water storage or conveyance facilities, in the late 2000s, Congress also weighed in, specifically Barbara Boxer and Dianne Feinstein, and environmentalists, and said, in addition to all of that, we're going to protect a fish called the smelt. And that permitted Washington to manage the little bit of water that those farmers had, literally. So it's Washington that determines that farmers only get 10% of their allocation, all to protect the fish. In California, fish and frogs and flies are really important. Far more important, apparently, than the 40% unemployment rates in certain parts of the Central Valley. So the Senate and the president could waive some of those water restrictions. They have been asked to do so, and they've refused to do so.
Carly, what is the biggest problem in the United States? If you could only wave a wand and cure one thing, what would it be?
Government has grown so huge, so powerful, so costly, so complex. It is literally crushing the life out of this country. It's crushing small and family-owned businesses, which are the economic engine of our nation. It is crushing possibilities out of people's lives by entangling them in a web of dependence from which they cannot escape. The weight, the cost, and the power of government are literally crushing the potential of the nation. We absolutely must get government under control, which means reducing its size and its power and its complexity in really fundamental ways. And that is why I am seriously considering running for president, and will make a final decision, over the next month or so, because I have come to the point of view that too many politicians have been captured in this system for too long, and they no longer see what needs to be done.
So I was never a guy that believed that I'm a business guy, and I believe in the entrepreneur, I believe in small business, and I believe in big business. Until I saw what businesses are now doing, the General Motors and the GEs of the world, these big businesses are indeed using the federal government to crush anybody else. Google meets with the White House once a week. Now, I don't have a problem with Google. I don't have a problem with these companies when they're by themselves. But as they begin to collude with government, it's a really bad thing. Where do you stand with the big businesses and the way it's being done with both the Republicans and the Democrats?
Well, that's right. It's called crony capitalism. Our government is so big that only the big, the powerful, the wealthy, and the well-connected can deal with it. And so you're exactly right. Big government and big business enable each other. Every time big government passes a new set of complex regulations, the big get bigger and the small get crushed. So when Dodd-Frank was passed, 10 Wall Street firms became 5 Wall Street firms. And meanwhile, 3,000 community banks have gone out of business. big government and big business are intertwined. You know, the FCC just published 400 pages of regulations. They're now going to regulate the Internet. And who was it who was in there helping the FCC write it? Google, Verizon, all the big guys. The only way to deal with this is to cut government back down to size, to begin to repeal so many of these things, to disentangle the complexity. The only way to level the playing field again is to vastly simplify and reduce the size of government.
So we're talking to Carla